Welcome, everybody, to the Neutral Zone Infraction Northwest podcast. I'm Drew, and let's talk about some sports. We're going to start off with a Week 1 NFL recap. Now, I'm super excited that football is back. I love football. It's my favorite sport, right up there with everything. And we're going to start out with some of my favorite highlights from this week in the NFL. We're going to start with the first game that I watched on Sunday. It was Packers at Jaguars. Now, why this game was exciting for me and fun is because the Jaguars actually gave the Packers a run for their money, which we're not used to seeing. We're used to seeing the Jaguars that will get rolled over by anybody and everybody. Less true last year, but definitely in the past. I guess that's what happens when you have so many top tier draft picks ready to go. They also converted, I think, 4 or 5 first downs on fourth down. So they converted fourth down more than they probably should have, and it was a lot of fun to see. The defense still has some question marks, but I think that the Jaguars are going to be a legitimate contender. I think that, and by contender I mean they might make the playoffs. Not a contender like a Super Bowl contender, but I think that they look really good, and I think that's fun. Another thing that was really awesome from Week 1 in the NFL was the Raiders-Saints game. So Jack Del Rio, at the end of the game, he's just scored what could be the tying touchdown, and they would either go for an extra point or try to go for 2 to win the game. And he rolls the dice, and he tries to go for 2, which blows all kind of statisticians' minds because they think less about the heart of football and more about the stats of football. I love it to death. I think it's a lot of fun. It shows that, you know what, I wanna win this game, and they did it by throwing to Michael Crabtree, which is even more hilarious because we all know what happens as Seahawks fans when you throw to Michael Crabtree in the end zone with the game on the line. Of course, the Saints don't have Richard Sherman, so it's not that big of a deal for them. But I think that it was a lot of fun. It showed a lot of heart from the Raiders, another one of those teams that have been historically bad for these last few years, and with all these draft picks, with new management and everything like that coming in, I think they're on the upswing. I think they're going to be a good team to watch going forward. A not so good team to watch, and another hilarious part of Week 1, Terrence Williams of the Dallas Cowboys decides to lose the game for his team at the end by not running out of bounds when he caught the pass with 10 seconds left to go. So they're in field goal range-ish. It's going to be iffy. So And since this game, he's gotten all kinds of garbage from fans saying, like, why didn't you get out of bounds? Your awareness is awful, which is absolutely true. And he defends himself by saying, I thought that I could juke the guy. You thought that you could juke the guy. Everybody in the NFL, every offensive player, every punt returner, every kick returner, thinks that he can juke the pants off of the other all-world athlete across from him and get those extra yards and win for the team and throw a sick spin move and a stiff arm, when in reality, a harsh reality for Terrence Williams, you're going to get tackled in bounds, the clock's going to run, you have no timeouts, and your team is going to lose. I got to tell you, if Terrence Williams was on the Seattle Seahawks, I'd be sharpening my pitchfork and lighting my torch, going and knocking on his door, because that is a bad way to lose. So that's the Week 1 recap. I'm not going to talk about every game. What I am going to talk about right now is the Seattle Seahawks. Now, the Seattle Seahawks are going to be a huge part of what this podcast is about, especially right now in the heart of football season. So let's talk about how we barely escaped the Dolphins. And I want to emphasize barely escaped because it was looking dire. It was looking scary. My blood pressure was up. The people in my proximity's blood pressure was up because I was just kind of transversing to them all of my feelings that I was feeling and my hands in my face. But we ended up pulling it out. Our defense really carried us. All of the big guys, Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, they carried the load. But I really liked what I saw from Deshaun Shedd. He made a lot of plays. He looked really good. Not quite good enough to be my Seahawk player of the week, but really good nonetheless, and he deserves a mention. That being said, let's get to my not-so-love Seahawks of the week. Let's start with my not-so-love Seahawk of the week. Get that out of the way. And it might be a surprise to some of you. It's Tyler Lockett. Now, I'm not talking all-pro return man Tyler Lockett. I'm talking about wide receiver Tyler Lockett. I thought in the return game he did what he was supposed to. I didn't see any poor decisions. The touchback is now at the 25-yard line when we're kicking off now. So if you're in the end zone at all, I don't know why you just wouldn't take a knee. But he had a good punt return, and he generally looked good on that front. But wide receiver Tyler Lockett didn't look nearly as good. He caught 3 of 7 passes, catchable passes, his direction. He fumbled. It was called an incomplete pass, but he straight up fumbled a ball that in our side of the field that would have really shot us in the foot early in the game. He wasn't the playmaker that I was used to seeing, and I'm excited to see a bigger, better game from Tyler Lockett, the wide receiver, next week. Now, my Seahawk Love Player of the Week, there were a lot of guys that did a lot of great stuff. You got Russell Wilson, who really fought through the pain with his ankle, and Doug Baldwin, his favorite target, and my favorite clutch receiver. He's so clutch. I love clutch players, but my clutch player, Love Seahawk of the Week, is Cassius Marsh. If we need a big play, and there were 2 times when Cassius Marsh really showed up, and he's not a player you're used to hearing from. He's not one that's making big plays. He's not making big money, but he really showed up in the clutch this game with that big field goal block that would have tied them up with us and really, really ruined it for us later. And also with the strip sack at the end. Now, the strip sack was probably less important. That was after Russell Wilson's excellent fourth quarter drive. So I'm not sure that I think Ryan Tannehill can drive the length of the field to get a field goal. He might have. I mean, we did miss that extra point, so it could have been disastrous for us, but Cassius Marsh made sure that those thoughts weren't in my head very long. Strip sack, it did go out of bounds. They eventually, ran into the other teeth of our defense, but Cassius Marsh came to play. He played hard, and that's why he's my Love Seahawk of the Week. So let's move on to the topic of the day. And my topic of the day is offensive lines. Now, you're thinking, oh man, Drew's about to rip into our offensive line, rip him a new one. Let me tell you what. No, I'm not. I'm going to rip fans a new one. Here's why. Offensive lines get the worst rap, have the worst, hardest job in the NFL, and they get no recognition. They're always the brunt of our aggression, especially in Seattle, because we have one of the worst ones in the league. But in reality, these guys are in the trenches. They are fighting. It's hard. It is one of the hardest jobs, if not the hardest job, in the NFL. Let me put it to you this way. There's an analogy that I like to use. So if we're talking about a defensive lineman who offensive linemen have to take on most of the time, defensive linemen, linebackers, rushing your quarterback or trying to make room for the run. So there's a few different types. Type number 1, I like to think of it as a feral cat. These are your quick defensive linemen, the ones that'll put you on skates and be back at your quarterback before you can say, hey, whose guy is that? So you take a feral cat, you put it in a garbage bag, not for too long, easy PETA, and you shake it up, and then you let it out. And then you tell that offensive lineman, you say, hey, block that, prevent that from getting to your guy behind you. Only, you can't grab it, you can't push it over too hard, you can't look at it wrong, you can't fall on it, you can't really sneeze in its direction. Otherwise, this guy over here in the zebra stripe suit is going to throw his flag and your offense is going to go back 10 yards. good luck. I gotta say, good luck for anybody. That feral cat's getting to where it wants to go, and that's no good for anybody. The other type of defensive linemen that we have in the NFL are the big, mauler, grizzly bear types. Now, same rules for the offensive line. You can't touch them, really. You can use your hands, you can push out and block, but you can't grab them, you can't look at them, you can't shoot them with your shotgun. These guys are giant grizzly bears mauling your face off. They can do pretty much everything but punch you in the face and grab your face mask, and you're stuck with your hands in your pockets because you can't really use them. You might as well have holiday hams strapped to your hands because according to the NFL, and we know there's holding on every play, but according to the NFL, you can't grab those guys. Like, you're moving backwards if you do. So, good luck with the grizzly bear type as well. Now, there's an even worse monster in today's NFL. It's like a hybrid between the two. It's like you merge the feral cat with the grizzly bear, and you get guys like Von Miller. You get guys like J.J. Watt. They're fast, they're big, they're mean, they're nasty, and they are here to break Russell Wilson's ankles. And you know what? These offensive linemen get no credit for really blocking these guys. I mean, they're paid okay, but you don't really know their name. I mean, besides the guys on your own team, on the Seahawks, if I tell most people the offensive linemen for another team are going to be like, who? They don't get the glory. They don't get the respect, except from their quarterbacks. Now, the quarterbacks are out there because they know what an inherent disadvantage offensive linemen in this league are at. They know that, man, they can't get that guy. So you see the quarterback shower offensive linemen in gifts, TVs. Tom Brady bought his offensive line some cars one year, jet skis. It's all crazy. Offensive lines get a bad rap. They're at an inherent disadvantage, and especially for us Seahawks fans, we really need to cut them some slack. Lucky for us, we have a gift, a great gift from the heavens. He's the greatest bald man I've ever seen. His name is Tom Cable, and he is our offensive line coach. He is here to coach these guys up, to turn these former defensive players, guys that you've never heard of off the street, into some sort of a cohesive unit. Well, you asked me, Drew, why can't we have an offensive line like the Dallas Cowboys or like the Green Bay Packers of old? Well, let me tell you why. Do you want to have Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Bobby Wagner on the same team? Do you all want to have them back there in their prime doing the vicious violence to the Dolphins that they did? I sure do. Well, with our salary cap, we can't have everything that we want. And the decision that has been made and has fallen straight on Pete Carroll, Tom Cable, John Schneider's shoulders is we're gonna cut in the offensive line. We lost our best offensive lineman, Russell Okung, last year. He plays for the Broncos now. I mean, there are things that have to be done. We keep losing these guys. Our best guys go to other teams because that's where they're gonna get paid. And they know it, and we know it. So we just use Tom Cable to teach these other guys how to get it done. So next time you're at your TV, and I'm guilty of it more than anybody, I'm like, oh man, who on the offensive line just got mugged to allow them into the backfield to crush Russell Wilson? I mean, I'm the worst. You got to think about the job that these guys have to do and really think to yourself, okay, I'm on my couch. I don't think that I could block these guys. So it's okay to say, oh man, you had a bad game, because, odds are they probably did. But just remember, your friendly offensive lineman needs a little love too. So figure out his name, buy his jersey, give him a high five if you see him, give him a sandwich. He'd love that. And just love your local offensive lineman. So when I put out a post to tell you all that I was going to start this podcast, I asked for questions, and you guys did really, really well. I got 2 sarcastic questions, and 1 good question formed in the sentence that wasn't actually a question. So that's what I'm not going to tackle today. I'm sure you guys will do better next week. You can send your questions to neutralzoneinfractionnorthwest@gmail.com. You can tweet at neutralzonenw. You can comment on the YouTube video. You can, like, subscribe, share, do all those excellent things. And next week, we'll get better questions. But this week, Morgan said, "Hey, Drew, you can talk about the build a bridge thing that the Seahawks did." Well, Morgan, I'm happy to talk about that. I'm going to preface this by saying, I don't really have the expertise or the knowledge to really talk about this at a highly educated level, but I'm going to do it anyway because this is my podcast and I can do what I want. The protests that we're seeing throughout the NFL, if you don't know, Colin Kaepernick started with not standing for the national anthem so that he could bring awareness to the police brutality and racism in our country. Now, I don't think that is an inherently wrong thing. I think that it's being gone about the incorrect way. I think the way the Seahawks did it was a little bit closer to the mark as far as what we need to do in order to make real change. I believe that racism is alive and well in our country and rears its ugly head every so often. I don't think it's as prevalent as it once was. I think we've made great strides to help with it. However, I don't think that it's gone. I think we as a nation, as a community, as human beings can do a whole lot more to better ourselves in this area. Now, one thing that Colin Kaepernick has done is really brought awareness to the entire situation. He's really shined a light mostly on himself of, I'm going to protest this. But what most people are seeing is not the why the protest is about. They're seeing the what's happening. Colin Kaepernick is, and people around the league are not standing up for the national anthem. And I agree that's not the best way to go about it. The reason why is with the national anthem, there's a whole lot of symbolism, and most people equate it to the military in a lot of ways. Most of us have some connection to the military. We know people that served. We know people that died in the military, and we take that national anthem and we symbolize it with that, which it absolutely is. It's a great country, great military, and I think that's where a lot of people have a problem with what's happening. They see it as disrespectful to the national anthem, and I agree. It is. What it is doing, though, is it is bringing awareness. It's getting people to listen. You got people kneeling. You got people standing with their fists in the air. You got people locking arms. So the message is a little muddled. We don't always know exactly who's protesting what, or is it all the same? I don't know. I think that could be a little bit more cohesive as a unit and bring that together. Does it need to be during the national anthem? I don't know. Does it need to be that way to garner the attention that they're trying to get for it? Maybe. Well, here's what it has done, and here's how they make it effective going forward. They, with the locking arms that the Seahawks did, with the Colin Kaepernick thing, everybody's watching. Everybody knows that's all that they would show during the national anthem. So now you've got to take that awareness and lead us into action. That's what all the great civil rights activists have done. That's what Martin Luther King Jr. did. That's what Gandhi did. You have got to take that protest and then move forward into action with it. You can't just, as Colin Kaepernick is doing, sit on the bench, take a knee until change happens. That's not how the problem gets fixed. He has the world as a captive audience now. He's said some things. Some of them make sense, some of them not so much. He has us. He has our attention. Now, if you're going to be this leader, if you're going to do this, I don't care if they organize and do it. I don't care. I don't really care who does it at all. We need that leader to take us from this protest to an actual action. You can't just say, change this, I don't like it. You've got to use action to make it better. So the long and the short of it is the Seahawks, I think, I love the display of team unity. I love that they sat around and had a discussion about it. There's a lot of large voices on that team. There are a lot of people that really feel closely and strongly about this issue, which I definitely understand why that would be the case. So be the leaders, be the correct display of unity that we need, which is really, really what it's all about. Is we need to unify together as a country and as a people. So lead us. I think that the way that you did it was much more respectful than kneeling down or putting your fist in the air. So I appreciate that. All in all, I think that it has the potential to be a useful movement. And I hope that it takes that next step into what it needs to be. So let's now move on to my favorite part of this brand new show. This is going to be the part where I pick games. So I didn't do it for week 1, but for week 2, I'm going to pick every single game that is happening in the NFL this week, and I'm going to hold myself accountable to it. Next week during my show, I'm going to tell you, did I go 12-4, or did I go 4-12? You'll hear about it either way. I may be a little coy depending on how it goes, but I got a good feeling about my picks, and I'm going to tell you why. So let's start with the Thursday night game. We've got Jets at Bills. Now, this is a big one for Rex Ryan and company. Rex and Rob coaching together, their last chance, twin brothers. It's got all the storylines. I'm looking forward to it, actually. The Bills' one saving grace in this game is that it's in Buffalo as opposed to in New York, because I'm sure the New York Jets fans would have a few things to say to Rex Ryan. I know that they loved him for a time, but fickle people in New York, I'm sure. The other problem is what I saw from the Bills in week 1, specifically Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor net 96 passing yards. That's 96. That's not 196. That's not 296. That's 96. And in today's NFL, that is simply put not going to cut it. Cannot happen again. If it does, they're absolutely going to lose. Regardless, I think they're going to lose anyway. I'm picking the Jets Thursday night against the Bills. Next game we have up, we've got Saints at Giants. I expect a shootout from this one. There's a lot of offensive weapons on both sides. With the Giants, you've got, of course, Odell Beckham Jr. and a resurgent Victor Cruz, which I was happy to see in week 1 this week. I love seeing him salsa dance in the end zone. It's a good story. He came on fire in the league, and then he was injured, and now he's back again. He's looking pretty good. And then you've got the Saints, who lost in heartbreaking fashion to the Raiders, which I already talked about a little bit. But I think that the Saints defense is going to ultimately be what is the deciding factor here. Is, can they stop them? Can they stop the passing attack of Eli Manning and the Giants, which isn't the best in the league by any stretch, but can put up some points. And the Saints defense has been historically bad. It was bad again last week. When your team scores 34 points behind Drew Brees throwing lightning bolts and you lose at home, there's some question marks raised. And I don't know how much grace Sean Payton has. He's a great offensive mind, a great offensive coach, but at some point, you've got to win. The next game it's a pretty funny one. We've got Cowboys at Redskins. It's a divisional matchup, and honestly, I have no idea who to pick. I saw things from both teams that I didn't particularly enjoy. Dak Prescott looked okay. Kirk Cousins looked terrible. He's getting paid $20 million this year with that franchise tag, and he better step it up if he wants to get any semblance of any kind of contract next year. But it's a divisional game. It's at Redskins. The Cowboys we'll see what they can do. I think the running game is going to ultimately be what gets the Cowboys the victory here. So I'm going to go with Cowboys at Washington. Next game on the list here, we've got Dolphins at Pats. This is going to be a rough game for the Dolphins if what I see from the Patriots continues. Jimmy Garoppolo looked pretty good against the Arizona, who really didn't show up to play to what they're capable of. But it's really scary that without Tom Brady, without Rob Gronkowski, the Patriots won at Arizona, who a lot of people are saying are the top team in the NFC, even above the Seahawks. So they've got a lot of talent. They just didn't really show up, and the Patriots took advantage of that. I don't see how the Dolphins are going to really get anything done here, especially at Foxborough. It's another divisional matchup, so you never know what's going to happen, but I'm definitely picking Patriots at Foxborough. So the 49ers versus Panthers, it's at Panthers. So this one's a funny one too, because on my little note sheet here, I put LOL next to this one. But after the Monday night game against the Rams, the 49ers look a lot better than they did last year with Jim Tom Sula going 5-11. They look a lot better on offense under Chip Kelly, which is no surprise. He's a great offensive coach, and their defense actually looked really good. Navarro Bowman is obviously a gigantic monster in the center of their defense that's here to put nightmares in my brain. But they looked a lot better than I thought. That being said, I think that the Panthers just basically outclassed them in every way. Sort of anything you can do, I can do better sort of situation. And it's in Charlotte, so I'm definitely going with the Panthers here. Next game on the list, I've got Titans at Lions. Now, the Lions looked really good against Indianapolis. They stole a win from them in Lucas Oil Stadium, which I was really impressed with. Especially impressive is Matt Stafford. He, I think, is finally going to have to come into his own a little bit as far as being the leader of that team. For the longest time, for as long as his career's been going on, he's had Megatron there. He's had Calvin Johnson, arguably the best receiver in the league, there to be his security blanket, if you will. And now he's gone. He's retired. And they still put up a bunch of points. And they generally looked pretty good against Indianapolis. And they're going up against a Titans team that really got beat up by the Vikings defense. Now, the Vikings defense is really good, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think that the Lions in Detroit really have the edge here. Marcus Mariota didn't look very good, and I think Matthew Stafford might finally be the quarterback that they've all been wanting in Detroit. Next game, we've got Chiefs at Texans, and this one's fun and not so fun for me. My fantasy team wants the Texans to score a lot of touchdowns, but at the same time, it wants the Chiefs defense to not give up any points. So sort of a conundrum for me here. But in the actual football world of it, I really liked what I saw the resilience of the Chiefs against the Chargers just storming back from that deficit. It really showed a lot of heart. And I was impressed by that. Of course, it was much the Chargers imploding as it was the Chiefs really, really going for broke there. But I think the Chiefs looked really good. The Texans, Brock Osweiler looks like he's going to be a pretty okay quarterback, which in this league, if you've got a pretty okay quarterback, you better have a great defense and great stuff around him, which I think that the Texans do. And I really like Bill O'Brien as a head coach. That being said, I'm going to go with the Chiefs here at Texas to sneak another win. Next game, we've got Ravens at Browns. And, man, I really feel bad for RG3. He's on the injured reserve again. He never, ever learned how to slide. And he's not Cam Newton. He can't take hits like Cam Newton, but he tries to. And so that's why he gets injured. He's on the injured reserve. The Browns are really lacking in talent in most departments. The Ravens didn't light anybody on fire. They beat the Bills, but they didn't light anybody on fire in week 1. But I think they come away at Browns with the win. Now, for my pick for chippiest game of the week, it's going to be the next game on the schedule here. We've got Bengals at Steelers. Now, if any of you remember that fateful playoff game, Bengals at Steelers last year, where basically there were 472 bajillion personal fouls, people got ejected, people got thrown out, and the Cincinnati Bengals imploded in the biggest way I think I've ever seen in a playoff game. It was going to be technically their first win, and they could not get it done. So I expect a lot of those emotions to sort of boil over in this game. I would not want to be the referee in this game at all. I wouldn't even want to be in the stadium. That being said, the Steelers' passing attack looked excellent. Antonio Brown doing Antonio Brown things. Big Ben has got all sorts of weapons, and I think the Steelers are going to end up pulling out a win in Pittsburgh. A very, very chippy win. Next game on the schedule, we've got Bucks at Cardinals. The Cardinals, as I was saying when I was talking about the Patriots, didn't really come to play on Sunday Night Football. They ended up eking it out, coming within a field goal at the end. But I think that they have a lot of potential, as much as I hate to say it as a huge Seahawks fan. I think they've got a lot of potential that they're going to end up capitalizing sooner rather than later. I definitely wouldn't want to be in any of those video rooms or any of those meeting rooms this week with Bruce Arians. That sounds like a hazard waiting to happen, like, take me out of this splash zone, I don't want to be here. But that's why I'm not an NFL football player. That and a few other things that I won't go into. That being said, they play the Buccaneers, and I actually liked what I saw from the Buccaneers. They're another one of these teams that have young talent. They've been bad, and so they draft high, and they get these guys. Jameis Winston being one of them. He looked really good, throwing touchdown passes, and Mike Evans, his favorite receiver, once again catching touchdown passes for him. That being said, I think at Arizona, I don't think Bruce Arians is going to come with a sleepy team 2 weeks in a row. I pick Arizona against the Buccaneers. Next game, we've got Falcons at Raiders, and I talked about the Raiders a little bit earlier. They're a team I'm very impressed with. Another one of those young teams, high draft picks. Falcons, I was pretty underwhelmed with what the Falcons came with. I didn't see too much about what's happened, but I really don't know what sort of weapons they have besides Julio Jones. They've got Devonta Freeman, and some good players on that defense. And I really like the coach, obviously. But I really don't think that they have enough weapons and enough stuff to really contend with the Raiders in Oakland. So I'm picking the Raiders. Next game on the schedule is my favorite game of the week, of course. It's Hawks at Rams. Now, I got to say, I loved what I saw from the Rams on Monday night for the reason of they looked awful. They looked terrible, and I'm super excited about that as we go in with a limping Russell Wilson. I think that's going to end up being an advantage for us. Case Keenum couldn't even dunk it off. He couldn't hand it to Todd Gurley. They knew he was coming. We're going to know it's coming. So really, I don't know what kind of weapons they have. That being said, the Rams always play us tough. Always. I don't think we're going to roll over them like I feel like we should, but I do think that we are going to come away with a win in LA. First game in LA for a while, so have fun with the traffic. Anybody who is there, not me, but that is what I think. Definitely Hawks to win. Go Hawks. Love the Hawks. Next game. Next game is the Jags at the Chargers. The Jaguars, as I talked about a little earlier, I think they're a legitimate team. The Chargers absolutely imploded against KC. I can't believe that happened. Phillip Rivers is always going to try to keep them competitive. Losing Keenan Allen was a big loss. There's not too many other big receiving threats. Antonio Gates is definitely past his prime in that system. And the Jaguars look really good on offense. I think there's some questions on defense they need to address, but they've got a lot of young, a lot of fast, a lot of mean on that defense too that I think is going to help them out. So Jaguars at Chargers, I'm picking the Jags. Next game is Colts at Broncos. So Andrew Luck finally is out of the shadow of Peyton Manning. Now, I'm sure they'll still talk about it because they love to talk about it, but finally he's not going to be going up against Peyton Manning, and maybe he can finally eke out some of his own ground as Andrew Luck, the quarterback, as opposed to Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning's replacement. He should be a lot less worried about the shadow of Peyton Manning than he is about the shadow of Von Miller and the Broncos defense. I think that he is going to be under duress. I think he's going to be on the ground a lot. And I really liked what I saw from the new kid in Denver, Trevor Siemian. He looked good, and enough to win with that defense. And that's all they can really ask for. If the Colts can put up a lot of points, they might be able to eke out a win, but I'm definitely picking Broncos to win at the Colts at Broncos. Sunday Night Football, we've got Packers at Vikings in the Vikings' brand new stadium. U.S. Bank Stadium, made of all glass. People like to throw rocks at it. I think there's some kind of rocks and glass houses analogy I could use here, but I don't really feel like it. The Packers at Vikings, I think it's going to be a good game. The Vikings defense is legitimate. They scored 2 touchdowns to really will their team to victory. It'll be interesting to see whether the Vikings play Sam Bradford, who they gave up a lot to try to give them a shot to win in their window of opportunity with Adrian Peterson, or if they play Sean Hill. The real question is how quickly can Sam Bradford really learn the playbook, which is pretty hard to do in the NFL, or at least they tell me. I think that it's going to be a close game for a while. It really is going to depend on the Packers and how their offense is, but I think the Packers are ultimately the better team. And as my father, a huge Vikings fan, would say, they can't beat a top-tier quarterback. So I'm picking the Packers to win to sort of spoil the inauguration of U.S. Bank Stadium. The last game of Week 2 is going to be Eagles at Bears on Monday Night Football. I really liked what I saw from Carson Wentz against the Browns. I think the Browns secondary is one of their better units that they have in a sort of less than talented roster. And I think that Carson Wentz made the Rams look really dumb. Jared Goff is sitting in his sweatpants on the sideline, and Carson Wentz is out balling against the Browns and leading the Eagles to a win. We'll see how long he can keep it up, what he does once he starts to face a little adversity, which he might see against the Bears, he might not. But I'm definitely picking the Eagles to win against the Bears. So those are my picks of the week. We'll recap those a little bit next week on the podcast. Before I leave us with the final thought of the day, I want to make a brief mention to that other sports franchise we have here in Seattle. The Seattle Mariners are on a winning streak as of right now. As I'm recording this and jinxing the bejesus out of them, they're on a 6-game winning streak playing the Angels. So hopefully we can keep that going. We're 2.5 back from the wild card. We're really kind of sniffing. We're knocking on the door. I hope we can keep it going, but we'll ultimately see. I'm not saying that they're great at winning down the stretch, which has been sort of the MO for the Mariners, but I think this team, this city, is ready for a playoff berth, and these guys, these guys, I think, have the ability to do it for us. That being said, we'll see what happens. Go M's. Keep fighting, as Ken Griffey Jr. would say, my hero, and hopefully we can make things work out in the end. My final thought of the day has absolutely nothing to do with sports. I thought it would be fun to just take a little snippet from my life and share it all with you guys. So my roommate this week was looking on Reddit, and he saw a statistic that said, if you are 24 years old or older, you've been alive for 10% of United States history. And that absolutely blew my mind. I was like, no, there's no way that can be right. So he's like, check the math, it works out. And so I did, slowly, and you know what? It checks out. And that is so mind-blowing. We're such a young country. We've got a lot of history, a lot of things going on. And I think we have the potential and are the greatest country. So there's a little final thought of the day for you. I hope you'd enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. First episode, be nice. I'm a millennial. I can't really take constructive criticism that well. But remember to to send your questions to neutralzoneinfractionnw@gmail.com. Tweet at neutralzonenw. Like, share, subscribe, love, all the social media things. Tell your friends. We're having a lot of fun here. Stay tuned Wednesdays for Neutral Zone Infraction Northwest. Thanks for listening.